Hey, welcome back guys. Today in this video, we are going to look at the API that we need to create for creating collections. So in our last video, we looked at creating the API for listing of collections. We had looked at the code which were helping us to pass these 4 tests. So in this video, we are going to look at the 2 tests which I have created to create new collections, and also I added a simple sort test so that I can ensure that the collections which are returned, right, are always sorted by the name so that it is easier for the user to understand where a collection could be. So let's start with the create test. Let me go to PHP Storm, and over here collection create test has 2 tests, as you can see. The first one is checking for the validation. As the name suggests, it requires name field. So let's see what we are trying to do. We create a user using the user factory, and then we authenticate that user, and we are trying to send an empty array to this particular route. How did we get this route? Let's go to api.php. We have a resource route called collection. So automatically inside our collection controller, let me close the api.php. In here, the store function will automatically handle the create part because it's a resourceful controller, and the API is also the same. So in here, if I see, I have the validation, and this is being tested over here. So I can assert that there are validation errors, and in that there is name as a key. So I got this tested. Then the second thing is it creates collection with current user as creator. So which basically means I need to test whether this is happening and whether this is happening. So let's see. We create a user. That is obvious because these APIs are for authenticated users, right? And that is something which we did over here as well. We create a name. We create a variable where we are storing the name. Okay, I could have directly used it, but I need that variable later on to assert. So I am keeping that inside a variable. I do this acting as post JSON to that particular store URL, or rather that API, and I'm passing this data in the post object. And once that is done, I get the JSON and I'm asserting certain things. The first thing that I'm asserting, interesting enough, I think I made a mistake over here. It cannot be ID. I think I got away with it because the creator ID was 1, but what I'm interested in is the creator ID. So let me do that. So basically what would have happened is if I had created user, and let's say user 1, and maybe I'll create user 1 first. Okay. And now what will happen is if I run my test, it will fail. It would say that user data.id doesn't match the expected value. Failed asserting 1 is identical to 2. So basically what I need to do over here is instead of ID, it is actually creator ID. Now it should pass. So as you can see, your tests are as good as you write them or you understand, right? So I made a mistake. I was able to catch that while I was explaining in the code. I must have done that in a hurry, and my tests are passing because at this point, right, my only user in the database was there, which is ID 1, and obviously the collection ID is 1. Okay, so you need to be a little careful. I made that mistake myself. So we are able to assert that the creator ID is correct because when we are returning that data, the current collection which is getting created is returned, right? So that piece is taken care of. We are also checking for this. If you want, you can even assert status 201 if you want to. I mean, up to you. And then I assert that the database has this particular thing. So again, the name, this is where I wanted, there's 2 places we would need the name, right? So we created a variable and we got that because the faker will every time create a new word, right? It's a function, it's a method, so you can't call that same thing. You'll have to store it somewhere. So I have that assertion over here. So pretty straightforward, right? We have an API which is calling this store function. The store function first validates this, adds the current authenticated user as the creator ID, creates the collection, and returns the response. I can also add, this is illuminate HTTP response. So illuminate HTTP response. What is it saying? Okay, it's a JSON response. So maybe I'll do JSON response, illuminate HTTP JSON response. So now this is even better, right? So yeah, that's how easy it is to create the API. Obviously, I showed you the tests first because that's how I did it this time, and I'm slowly getting into the habit of creating the tests first. I used to write tests since a long time, but I'm slowly trying to get into the habit of the actual TDD where I first write my tests. Okay, so this was one, and then obviously the API where, and I'm listing the collection, right? I had that sort order thing, order by name. So I quickly added one test where what I'm doing is, apart from the user, I created two collections. One is with the name Amitav and the second one is John. Okay, and I every time know that Amitav should ideally come first, and that's why I did data.data.0th element, which is the first element, and I'm asserting that the first element name, first collection name is Amitav. That can be as simple as that, and I don't think there is any problem with that, right? So yeah, that's about it, guys. That's what I wanted to cover in this video where we created our API for creating collections. If you like this video, do click on the thumbs up icon and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.